So this is 2017, question 8 on the ordinary level paper. So every second year in ordinary level, question 8 alternates between marginal costing and absorption costing. So this is absorption costing. And within absorption costing, generally it can come up in two different ways. Okay, so this is one way that it can come up. Okay, now the second way is quite similar. It's just that there's a bit of percentage work, a reallocation of service costs into the production departments, and that's the only difference really. Okay, so first of all, read through the question and see what it's asking or see what it's telling you. So it says Fencing Limited, a small jobbing company, has the following budgeted figures for the coming year. So budgeted means they're they're estimated. Okay, they're not. This is us looking forward for the year and estimating that these will be our costs, okay? So they've direct materials budgeted at 420,000. They've direct labour budgeted at 134,400. They have factory overheads at 120,000, and then they've budgeted direct labour hours of 16,000 hours and budgeted machine hours of 8,000 hours, okay? So the direct materials and direct labour, they are clearly direct costs, okay? So they are directly related to making a product. However, factory overheads are other costs that are incurred through the normal working of the business, okay? So that could be insurance or light and heat, for example. So you need insurance as a business, okay? But insurance is not directly related to making a table. So therefore, we need to make sure that we are charging enough money to our customers to cover all of the costs, not just the wood and the wages that goes into making the table, but we need to be contributing towards all of the other costs that are going to be happening in the business, okay? So those costs are estimated to be €120,000 for this company, okay? So there are estimates that they'll be €120,000, and they are indirect costs. If you want, I'll write that beside it for you. So they're indirect costs. Now, so then it gives us budgeted labour hours. So they have budgeted that there's going to be 16,000 labour hours this year. And they've also budgeted that there's going to be 8,000 machine hours, okay? And the first thing you're asked to do is to calculate the overhead absorption rate per direct labour hour. So in reality, accountants would decide what basis to divide these indirect costs out by. Okay, and they would either go by the labour hours or the machine hours. They would just choose one. This is a leaving cert question, so they're asking you to do both. So what would the rate be if they decided to divide it by labour hours? And what would the rate be if they decided to divide it by machine hours? Okay, so then you're given details of job number 562, and it's given some information here in this box about the job. And we're asked to calculate the job using the machine hour rate, and then calculate it again using the direct labour hour rate. Okay, then after that you're asked to calculate the selling price, and then you've got a small bit of theory. Okay, so we'll start off here now with part A. Okay, so it's the overhead absorption rate per direct labour hour, and to do this, it is part A. It's your budgeted overhead divided by budgeted hours. Okay, so our budgeted overhead is the €120,000. I'm asked to divide it out by the labour hours. So the budgeted labour hours is 16,000 hours. Okay, so it's going to be 120,000 divided by 16,000. So 120,000 divided by 16,000, and that will give me my rate that I'm going to charge towards the indirect costs based on the number of labour hours, okay? So it's going to be 120 into your calculator, 120,000 divided by 16,000, which works out at €7.50 per direct labour hour. Okay, and that's that first part done. Okay, so that's part A done. Oh, sorry, the first part of part A, there's two parts. So put an I in there. So the next part is to do the same thing, but instead of using the labour hours this time, use the machine hours. Okay, so part 2 It's the same formula, okay? It's the same formula, budgeted overhead divided by the budgeted hours. So the overhead is still 120,000 euro. So this is what I'm saying. In real life, accountants wouldn't be doing both out. They just choose which one to go with, okay? But we're doing a leaving cert question. They're asking us to calculate both. So if we were dividing it by machine hours, what would the rate be? So it's the budgeted overhead, which is still 120,000 euro, and divided by the budgeted machine hours, which is 8,000 hours. So 120,000 divided by 8,000, which works out at €15 per machine hour. Okay, and you have to always make sure that you are writing per labour hour or per machine hour down. You have to write it down. Okay, you'll lose marks if you don't. Okay, so that's the first two parts done. Now we're on to the job, okay? So we've got details here of the job. So this is like, just say we're a table making factory. This job, a customer came and we've labelled it job number 562. And they want us to make X amount of tables, right? They want us to make a load of tables for them. The materials that we're going to need are 20,000 euro worth of materials. That's the wood and the screws, etc. Okay? We also are going to need wages. So we need to calculate the wages rate. So sometimes you might get a question where it will say direct materials, 20,000, and then underneath it will have direct labour and it will give you the figure. So that's how much we're actually paying for the wages of our employees, okay? So in this question, we're not told how much the wages are. So we need to calculate what the wage rate is, okay? So this isn't actually asked of you in the question, but you need to do it to be able to calculate your cost of your job. So you need to calculate the wage rate per hour, okay? And to do that, you're going to use the budgeted figures, okay? So up here, we have direct labour, that's wages cost, okay? Wages. So the direct labour is 134,400 euro. That's what they're budgeting it'll cost them. And that figure there is based on people working for 16,000 hours. So if 16,000 hours of work is costing us 134,400 euro, to get the wage rate per hour, it's going to be the 134,400 divided by the number of budgeted labour hours, the total number, 16,000 hours. So just enter your calculator, 134,400 divided by 16,000, which works out at €8.40 is what I'm paying my staff per hour. Okay, per hour. They're getting €8.40. So now we're able to actually go ahead and do part B. So it asks us to calculate the cost of job number 562 using the overhead absorption rate per machine hour, right? So this is where we're going back up and we're using this figure here. Sorry, that's a terrible arrow. So we're using this figure here for part 2 that we got, okay? So we're going to absorb our overheads based on the machine hour rate, which is €15 per machine hour, okay? So for this one, it's going for part B. And you're saying job number 562. Okay, so what do we need? We're trying to come up with the cost of this job. So the cost, how much is it costing us to do this job? So we're going to need direct materials, and that's given to us in the question. Direct. And they're 20,000 euro. Then we're going to need direct labour. So the direct labour is the wages, okay? So we're going to use this 840 that we calculated up here. So we're paying our staff €8.40 for every hour that they work. So for this job, how many hours are they working? Here, they are working 260 hours. Okay, so multiply by 260 hours. So 260 by €8.40, which is 2184. €2,184. Okay, so that's how much we are paying our staff in wages. Okay, so for every job you need to have, especially at ordinary level, materials, labour, and then your overheads. So the last thing that's going to go in is our overheads. So we need to make sure that every job that we are doing are contributing towards the €120,000 of direct indirect costs that we have. Okay, and we already calculated up here in part 2 that we are going to charge €15 for every machine hour in a job. Okay, and this question is asking us to calculate the cost if we absorb the overheads using the overhead absorption rate per machine hour. Okay, so that means we are going to, if we decided we're going to charge €15 per machine hour, so it's €15 multiplied by the number of machine hours in this job, which is 170 hours. Okay, 15 by 170, which is €2,550. 2,550. And that's it. So you're now adding those three together, which adds up to €24,734. So that's total cost. And you can just label it total cost. I'm sorry. Okay, that's that part done. Now we have to basically do the very same thing, except for when we're getting the overhead part, this part here, we are going to use the labour hour rate, which is the $7.50 per labour hour, this one here. Okay, so it says calculate the cost of job number 562 using the overhead absorption rate, okay, the overhead absorption rate per direct labour hour, which is what we calculated up here. So the overhead absorption rate per direct labour hour is $7.50 per direct labour hour. So for this, we're basically going to do the very same thing as we did in part B, except the only thing that's going to be different is the overhead figure. So direct materials. They're 20,000, that's staying the same. The direct labour then is also staying the same. So the wages are still going to be the same. The only difference is the way that we're charging the overheads, the indirect costs. So if we based it, if the accountants decided to base it on labour hours, they would be charging €7.50 for every labour hour that happened in a job. So €7.50. How many labour hours happened in this job? 260 hours. So 750 by 260, which is €1,950. Okay, and that's all you need to get your total cost. So adding those three together, which gives you 24,134. That's your total cost. Okay, and the last part then of the question, well, the last calculation part, is calculate the selling price. So we need to calculate the selling price of job number 562, going with if the accountants decided to go with the labour overhead rate, okay, which basically is what we did in part C. So you're using your part C answer. So you're going to carry on with your part C, and we want to calculate a markup on cost of €20,000. Okay, so when you're doing a markup, you're starting off with your cost. Okay, so you go total cost. I'm using this one here, so it's 24,134. Okay, when you're doing a markup, your cost is 100%. Okay, then your profit is whatever the percentage they've given you in the question is, which is 20%, which means that your selling price is 120%. Okay, so to get your profit, you just literally have to get 20% of 24,134. So into your calculator, 24,134 multiplied by 20%, which is €4,826.80. Okay, and you're adding that then to the cost. Okay, so the job is costing us €24,134. We want to make a profit because most businesses are set up to make a profit. So that means in order for us to make that 20% profit, we need to be selling this job. We need to make the customer pay the two of these figures added together, which is €28,960.80. Okay, and that is it. Okay, so that's our selling price. Okay, and the last part there is state 2 reasons why a business needs to calculate the cost of a product. So the first reason is to calculate a selling price, and the second reason is to see if the product or the idea would be profitable. Okay, and that is how you do that question. That's one of the ways that it can come up.